This Quarkcast podcast is brought to you by the Outsiders Banquet. They told you that your doubts made you broken. But what if your cracks are actually where the light comes in? It's a story about the kind of grace that doesn't demand you hide your scars. It's grace that transforms them into something golden. The Outsiders Banquet is about becoming whole, not staying the same. Come, join us at our table. The Outsiders Banquet is available now on Amazon.
Western Christianity has spent the last 2,000 years telling everyone they're separated from God.
This is Not Church with John and Nat Turney and Bethany Shea.
Well, welcome back to the podcast, friends. My name is Bethany. I'm here without Nat because Nat broke his leg and he is trying to figure out how to make it feel better and go to all the doctor's appointments. And so we are missing him today. But I have John on the podcast as usual. You want to say hi, John?
Hi, John.
Nice. And we get to have another person that we are hosting with today. We get to hear from Reverend Julia Matallana Freedman. And she is part of she just wrote a book recently, and she was recently ordained to the transitional diaconate and in the Episcopal Church in the Diocese of Massachusetts. And she serves as a full-time pastor at an Episcopal Church in the Diocese of Rhode Island. She holds a Master of Divinity from Duke Divinity School. She's a first-generation college graduate and passionate about the intersection of faith and trauma, often preaching on social justice, suffering, and the importance of living out one's faith in contemporary society. And she lives in Rhode Island. She just came out with a new book called Sanctuary of Healing, Transforming Churches into Trauma-Informed Spaces. It is so good to have you on this podcast. Julia, how are you doing today?
Oh, thank you, Bethany. I'm so glad to be here. Hello, John. I am doing well, and I'm excited for our conversation.
Yeah, I'm so excited too. So one of the first things that we like to ask guests is just to give us a little bit of your faith background, your spiritual journey, where you find yourself today in this current moment.
Well, I'll tell you, Bethany and John, and I guess the listeners as well, that you are finding me here on the week before my ordination to the priesthood. So
amazing.
Something I'm really excited about happening this weekend. And yeah, but let me kind of get into kind of how I came to this. I grew up in a fundamentalist Christian home. But there's some kind of identity and even spiritual trauma that kind of mingles in with all of that. I'm a late discovery adoptee. My dad, who was born and raised in Colombia, South America, immigrated to the US in his late teens and adopted me when I was 2 years old. My mom, who is white, she is something of like a fourth or fifth generation Oregonian, where I spent a good chunk of my childhood. But I got connected with my biological father in 2022, and he is from Singapore. So that has kind of been an interesting thing to learn about my own biological ethnicity and all of that. But I'll be honest, I didn't have a super healthy structure to kind of process all of these things growing up. And so in many ways, these experiences were kind of traumatic for me. And I kind of came to a point in my life where, I was 15 years old and I was like, I am going to break the cycles of abuse and harm from my family of origin. And that kind of led me down a path of being weirdly obsessed with theology and trauma. And, I'll share too for the listeners who relate to this that I went no contact with my family of origin in 2017 before it was kind of a widespread phenomenon in the way that it is now. And what I can share with you is that it was the best and healthiest and also most difficult decision that I had to make, in my journey. And, since then, my family of origin is not supportive of women in ministry and thinks that I am sort of have morally failed because of my calling, right? And so this has kind of all been part of my journey. And I'm so grateful for the little family that I have found and made with my husband and my daughter. And the support that they are in my ministry life, right? And really excited for ordination to the priesthood this weekend.
Oh, I've got like a million questions.
I know, there's so much there.
That was
There's so much
amazing.
there.
No, just like the fact that you came to terms with so much at the age of 15. I'm also an adoptive parent. I have 3 kids that I've adopted through the foster system, and the amount of trauma that they've experienced in their life, and trying to keep the adoptions as open as possible, whatever their families of origin are willing to do and whatever our kids want. But that breaking, that decision of breaking generational trauma and saying this ends here. This does not continue forth in my life. That is so mature for a 15-year-old. And I'm like totally impressed right now. My goodness gracious. I think that God just had his hand on you, that in like a way that was so, just incredible. So I'm stoked. So, okay. So you chose to back away from your family of origin for your own mental health and your own spiritual health. And are you still connected to your adopted family at all?
Yeah. So,
Okay.
My Colombian father and my mom, I'm no contact with.
Okay.
There was like a piece of me that really was, suffering. It's almost like suffering grief before they've died. Right. And part of that was losing connection to like my Colombian family. That was a really hard decision, and like feeling like I'm disconnected from my people, even though I'm biologically, like I was raised in a half Latino home, but I'm biologically Singaporean. So it's like all confusing for everyone.
I bet. Wow. So that influenced a lot of what you decided to write about in this book when it comes to being somebody who is trauma informed personally, and then how you kind of create spaces for people to experience that spiritually in the context of a church community. Is that right?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. One of the things that I talk about a lot in my work is the importance of naming. And like, even just hearing you talk about your own children and like hearing you name what they have experienced and gone through, like that is so important, right? To name the trauma. And like, it doesn't have to even be publicly, right? It could be privately within your family context, or journaling, or with a therapist, right? But that is kind of one of the foundational pieces, I think, of healing and bearing witness to each other's pain, is being able to name it and putting words to it. One of the things, you guys might find this interesting. One of the things that I read when I was looking at like MDs and psychologists and stuff for this project, is that trauma, and maybe you can relate to this, like if you've ever been through a traumatic, everybody has trauma of some kind, right? So trauma kind of hijacks your language processing center. So in the moment, you don't have words, right? Because your brain is just trying to survive, and that's all it's thinking about is survival. Your language, you might not have the words at first, right? To talk about, my experience with fundamentalist Christianity, right? It's over time and over this process of healing and internal healing that I've been able to find the language to even talk about those types of experiences,
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, looking back at as I was leaving the church, I guess, for lack of a better description, my brother was going through his major deconstruction at the same time. And I didn't have words for the trauma that I was experiencing. But having a community of people around me who were kind of going through some similar things helped. And so I had my brother there, and we could like almost like bounce stuff off each other. And that really helped.
Yes.
Yeah. So you were able to name it.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah. And one of the things that I also think about is naming in community, right? Like one of the things that's hard about this work is, so in my book, I'll just kind of preface this by saying in my book, I talk about how to host support groups for trauma. And, one of the fears, I think, for people who are maybe leading, parishes or in community networks or what have you is, the fear of trauma dumping, right?
Yeah.
Where we're all just sitting around sort of trauma dumping on each other, right? And And I think there are some really practical ways to do this well and to bear witness to one another's pain in community by hearing each other, supporting each other.
Right.
And so that's one of the things that I write about in the book is like how to do this well, is like how do we in community do these types of support groups, build networks of support and do that well.
I just think that that's such important work to do. I love it. A friend of mine always says there's no such thing as trauma Olympics. And so when you're sharing your trauma, you're not trying to like one up the other, like my trauma is worse than your trauma, but actually creating safe spaces for people to share honestly and vulnerably, knowing that what they've experienced is the hardest thing they've experienced, even if it's nothing what you've experienced and you've experienced way harder from like the grand scheme of things. What people are experiencing need to be honored and validated. How do we do that in faith spaces that don't always feel safe, that people are not trained as a trauma-informed person to facilitate conversations like that? How do we not create more trauma on top of trauma if we're trying to do this in a faith-based background or places?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So there's a couple things that I will start with. First, one really practical thing is to get the right like moderator or the right person to kind of moderate the conversation. A lot of times people bring in an outside person. So maybe like a pastor from another church or something like that, because sometimes having a more neutral relationship with the group can be helpful. But there are also some really practical tips that I share in the book. And if you're willing, I will read them to you. They come from the National Alliance on Mental Illness, and they actually have two lists. They have one that's group guidelines, which I'll read to you because it's short.
That'd be great.
If you want. Okay.
Yes.
And then they have another list that's their principles of support. That's a little longer, worth looking up. Both of them are worth looking up. And I can even share the link if that would be helpful.
Yeah, we'll put it in the show notes.
The first one, some of these, let me just preface by saying some of these may seem like common sense to us. I've been in church groups that do not do these things. So like we need to do better, right? So 1, start and stop on time. 2, time limit for check-in. 3, absolute confidentiality. 4, be respectful. 5, be mindful of others, no monopolizing or crosstalk. 6, keep it in the here and now. I just want to add here, this one's really important. Like if you want to avoid kind of the trauma dumping and kind of going back into the past, keeping your conversation in the here and now and like, what are you experiencing right now because of maybe a past trauma? That can help a little bit. And then 7, empathize with each other's situation, which reduces the trauma Olympics phenomenon, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I think these are really practical. I was a part of a support group that read these at the beginning of every session. So like keeping them front and center, centering your time on these types of principles can be really one really practical and helpful way to start conversations on hard topics.
I want to back up just a little bit and ask a question that I think that might be asked, and that is, what is a trauma-informed space? What does that mean?
Yeah. What does that mean? So a trauma-informed space, I think it means we are aware that people are coming into our spaces with trauma.
Okay.
And understanding how to, like, I'm trying to think of an example. Like, I think it can impact all different aspects of our experience, right? It could be being mindful of the lighting and the scent in the room and what are people seeing, feeling, and experiencing when they're in your space?
Gotcha.
I think it can be that practical.
Okay.
But then I also think like our leaders need to be informed as to what trauma does to individuals, what it does in our brain, what it does to our responses. Yeah, like I think our leaders need to be informed about this. And especially in the days we're living in, where there's just trauma everywhere. I can think of an example, in the Diocese of Massachusetts, there are some churches in the Boston area that have more ethnic diversity than like maybe the larger church altogether, right? And if you are a parish that has ethnic diversity, we should be aware enough to realize that some people are experiencing racial trauma in this moment, racial violence, right? Like fear of leaving your home because of ICE detention, the fear of ICE detention, right? Or fear of going to the grocery store, or not being able to go to work like you normally would, or even just operating normally, but feeling like I could be caught up in the wrong place at the wrong time on my way to work. Like those are all things that I think, pastors and priests need to be aware of. And I think every context that's going to be different, right?
Yeah.
Like, I was talking to a pastor in Tennessee, for example, and he's in a rural area in Tennessee, and they're losing, folks are losing access to healthcare. Folks are struggling to find mental health care in the area, right? Like that's economic violence. Maybe there needs to be a support group for people suffering from economic violence. Maybe there needs to be a support group for those struggling to find mental health care. Every context is going to kind of have its own need.
So it's really being mindful of the space and coming into that space with the lens, like as a leader, coming into that space with the lens of the reality that most people are struggling through something serious in their life, in the past or even in the present, and creating a space that feels gentle, kind. It's not abrasive in any way. The music isn't harsh. The lighting isn't going to cause headaches. The smells, like no one's wearing over perfumed or scented candles. So just like being gentle. I think that's such an important thing for any leader, regardless of it being like a group setting. Like I'm not creating a trauma support group in this moment. I am creating a worship service on a Sunday morning that should be trauma informed, even if it's not explicitly said. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think that is such good wisdom to be able to approach a space like that as one of the leaders. I really appreciate this. This is just, I'm learning a lot right now. So thank you.
Oh, I'm so glad, Bethany. That means truly a lot. One of the things I think about with worship too is like what our body, like as a trauma informed person, I am really thinking about like what our bodies are experiencing. Like our worship is embodied, right? We kneel and we stand and we walk to the altar to receive communion. In Episcopal churches, I know that you are United Methodist, Bethany, but in Episcopal churches, oftentimes folks will face the gospel book or turn to face the cross, right? Like there's something embodied, and actually think it is so healing to like be present in our worship and like appreciating how our bodies are part of that.
Yeah. This yesterday was Sunday for me, and I invited everybody to kneel during prayer, a time of prayer. And we don't have kneelers at our church, and so I invited people to go around the room and find a place that felt comfortable for them. And if they wanted to stay in their pew and not kneel, that was perfectly fine. Whatever they needed to do, and then provided paper for people to pray if they'd want to just journal in prayer instead of kneeling in prayer. But it's creating enough like opportunities for people to embody that space in the way that they are comfortable doing. And sometimes if you do it week after week, the things that are so intimidating, like kneeling in prayer, become comfortable. It becomes something that is less intimidating the more you do it. And I'm always struck on like the song "Oh Holy Night" where it says fall on your knees. And I just want to invite people into those more embodied experiences of connecting with the divine in our everyday lives. And so I love that in the Episcopal Church, they invite the people to turn, to look, to be mindful, to be aware of the way that their body and their mind and their spirit are all connected.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, that's beautiful. I also love hearing, Bethany, that you were offering like options, right? Like people could journal. I don't know. I just think that's like, not everybody does that, right? Like to offer options and let people, you know, yeah.
Well, I mean, it seems to be, you want to be more informed of your congregation, and you might have someone who can't kneel for whatever reason, a medical reason.
Yeah.
And so you have to be hyper aware. You don't want to be ableist and assume that people can stand when they can't stand. And so to make it an option.
Yeah.
As part of what you're saying, so people don't feel uncomfortable when they can't do what you're asking them to do, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
And nowadays there's so many people, there were always, but it feels like it's even more so. There's so many people that are neurodivergent, and having an expected, like, this is what it looks like to be a part of a group community. You have to be sitting in this space and not moving too much, and need to be listening and focusing, and you can't be on your phone. It really does limit people's experiences with connecting with the divine and with the wider community if it has to look a specific way. And so at our church, we always pass out like fidget toys, and people can be on their phones or iPads or whatever if they need to, whatever they need to do, because it's just, we want to create spaces. I mean, just the fact that somebody steps foot into a sanctuary is an incredible feat in of itself. If they're there, they can show up however they want. There's no need to be a specific person. It's just so important.
One of the other things that's like popping into my mind as you're talking is I write about like accessibility, and this kind of also what John was saying reminds me a little bit of what John was saying too, that I think we need to be aware of how, I'll give an example. My parish that I'm at right now has an elevator. Well, actually has a lot of stairs to get in, and there's an elevator, but the elevator is often broken. And so if you are immobile in any way, you really can't get into the church building as it stands right now, which is something I would love to see if we can, adjust, right, to make it accessible, right? It's just like such a clear and obvious way that we're inaccessible,
I was speaking with someone who was in a wheelchair once, and they said, it's one thing to make it accessible to the church. If I can get into the church and I see that that there's no way for me to get up onto where the pastor stands, then your church is not accessible to me.
Oh, wow. See, that's trauma informed, John.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really good.
That is.
And so it was like one of those things. It's like, so when I go to, when I would step into a church and I would see, okay, there's a raised platform where the pastor stands, and there's no accessibility for a wheelchair. That means your accessibility is to the congregation, and that's as far as it is.
Yes, and you're not represented up front, right? Yeah. That's a really interesting perspective.
Yeah, well, and that's difficult when you're in a very traditional church setting where the expectation is that the pastor is behind a pulpit or up on the stage or whatever, or even not even traditional. A lot of evangelical churches have stages for pastors as well. And I think the more that we can come down to the level of the people, the more barriers are like lifted in some ways. I'm curious about how you can help people feel safe in a congregation when like the fidget toy for one person is like nails on a chalkboard for the person sitting next to them. Like, how do we create spaces for people to know that they can get up and move around and take care of themselves, like take care of their own bodies, be mindful of their own emotional state? How do we communicate that, or how do you communicate that, I guess?
Yeah, I heard a priest talk about this differentiation, and I found it helpful for situations like this, that we are a body who prioritizes mutual deference over personal preference, right? So if somebody next to you has a personal preference that someone doesn't play with a fidget toy, at least in my mind as a leader, I'm going to say, wait a second, that's personal preference, right? But we're choosing, as we worship together, we're choosing mutual deference to one another out of our love for each other, right? Like somebody can't, I can't think of an example off the top of my head, but let's say somebody can't tolerate something because of a past trauma in worship. We defer to each other out of our love and care for one another, right? So I think talking about that difference between personal preference and mutual deference is a helpful one.
Yeah. I went to a church for a while where we had someone in the congregation who would just speak up, and it very easily could be taken as problematic. But the pastor just flowed with it and accepted it and just made it part of the service. And then, so that was his way of normalizing the situation, right?
Yes.
And it made it a lot easier for everyone around to not, okay, this is distracting. Why doesn't this person have to get up and leave? And it was very, very helpful that the pastor was like that.
Yes. I think about that with like crying children in the service. I'm very conscious to like not make a comment, right? Or not draw attention, just kind of roll with it, speak over the child, and it's all right. We're all here together,
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
It could be something as simple as someone's phone going off, right? That could be,
that's right.
That could be a point of embarrassment. That can be a point of where they could be pointed out or singled out, and that could become very traumatizing, depending on how the person reacts to it themselves.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, I saw something once where a phone was going off in a church service and the pastor got so upset. Like, this happens every Sunday. It needs to stop. And the pastor realized it was his own phone.
That's funny. I will be honest with you. There's a part of me that wants to make a joke of like, God is calling, pick it up. But, again, I don't want to single anybody out, embarrass them, all the things. But
so you are becoming ordained or you're getting your ordination in the Episcopal Church next Sunday. So when this comes out, it'll have just happened for those that are listening to this. Yep.
Right. That's right.
I'm curious how you will try to create these spaces of what you've talked about in the book. How will you create spaces like this in your own congregation, within your own spaces?
Yeah. One thing we read the Psalm of the day every week. And I have this desire. I haven't brought it up to them quite yet, but I have this desire to make our reading of the Psalm, we recite it together. So every church kind of has a different pattern around how they read the Psalm, but we recite it together. And there's a desire in me to actually make it a somatic exercise by coupling our breathing along with it. This is a little creative on my part, but we use the asterisks at the end of each line, not each line. It's like usually every other line. And I use the Psalm even in my own prayer practice as a somatic exercise by breathing at the asterisks, a deep breath, and then exhaling on the next line. And then I do the same thing, read to the asterisk, exhale on the next line. And the words are familiar enough, typically, especially for like our cradle Episcopalians who, born and raised, the words are familiar enough. You can focus on your breathing. And there's something about us doing that in community and having our heart rates all come down together and having our breath kind of be synced up. So I haven't tried this yet in a worship setting, but it's something I would love to try.
As an Episcopalian pastor or priest, will you have your own congregation starting on Sunday, or what does that look like?
So I'm already at a congregation. I'm technically, the term they use is deacon in charge.
Okay.
So I am a deacon in charge of this parish in Rhode Island. And when I am a priest on Saturday, I will be their priest in charge.
Okay.
So I already have a parish that I am serving, and we're getting to know each other. It's brand new. I started on October 1st. So Yeah. So that's exciting.
Will you have other deacons with you as well?
No.
Like working beside you? Okay.
No. I'll kind of be like a solo priest.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
So you can, if you wanted to, you can incorporate the psalm reading, breathing into your service.
Absolutely.
Oh,
There's
wonderful.
definitely some room. There's definitely some room for that. So yes.
Wow, that's so beautiful. Are you planning on doing anything else in the worship service that might be a little bit divergent from the typical norm? And then how do you create enough gentle massaging into the congregation for things that might be unexpected? Because the unexpected can be a form of trauma-inducing things for people.
Yeah, that's right. I think one of the gifts about the Episcopal Church, well, actually a lot of church, mainline church, maybe I should say, is the predictability, right? That, with, as somebody myself with a lot of spiritual trauma from fundamentalist background, knowing what to expect and having it written in a bulletin or even a prayer book where the instructions are all written out for you can be really helpful for those who have spiritual trauma.
So yeah, that sort of predictability and putting everything in the worship book, or having it's already in the worship book because it's a pre-made book, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Although I have been very intentional to write a bulletin with all the instructions written out. Some churches are, better or worse at this, but I think as somebody who's come to the Episcopal Church a little later in my life, that I am very aware of like having things written down so that people can follow, even if they are brand new. Right.
No, that is really helpful. I used to be a food server and we had this like saying called delete the wonder. Like, I wonder when my food's going to be out, or I wonder if that comes with ketchup or whatever it is. And so I think even as a pastor, it's really helpful for people to know, like to expect the questions before they come. And even if they've come for the last 3 or 4 months and it's the same thing every Sunday, going over those things each week is really helpful. I've gone to Mass at the Catholic Church a number of times, and even still, I get lost because I don't know what comes next, and I don't know what page to turn to in the worship book, and I feel like a fish out of water. I'm like, I've been a Christian my whole life. I'm a pastor. I'm ordained, like all the things, and yet I do not know what I'm doing here, and I don't like it. I don't like not knowing what to expect. So when we can let people know beforehand, even just like the bathrooms are across the courtyard or whatever, like those things are so helpful for people to feel safe in a congregation.
I love that. Remove the wonder, delete the wonder. That's such a great way of thinking about it. Yeah. I could envision starting a support group of some kind, like leading a support group of some kind. There's actually a women's shelter that's close by to my parish. So I thought about maybe offering kind of sort of interfaith type of setting where women could come and feel safe in like a spiritual setting with someone like me.
Yeah.
I haven't started that yet, but maybe in the future.
Yeah. Yeah. And I wonder, even as you're talking, I'm wondering like having a group start in a place that they are already familiar with, if you're doing it outside of your church setting, could be a good place just to like gain trust and for people to know who you are. And then offering, I don't know, you don't have to offer two groups or anything, but one on campus and one on like at this shelter. And sometimes it takes a long time for people to dip their toes into a sanctuary or into a church building if they haven't been in a while.
That's right.
Yeah.
And getting over the threshold can be really, I mean, you've mentioned it a couple of times now, but it can be really a challenge for folks. Yeah.
Yeah. For those of us who have left the church, the idea of stepping back into a church is trauma inducing, and it creates a situation where you're uncomfortable. You don't know what you're stepping into. If you have that trauma from a previous church, all that stuff starts coming back up. You start to like go through all that in your brain, right?
Well, and so much of church life for people who have experienced trauma. I mean, and when I say trauma, I mean just like feeling rejected by the church or feeling unseen, or because they're a queer person, because they, for whatever reason. Oftentimes it's like to be able to step back into a building like that, it just, dredges up all those old memories and old feelings that are really scary for people to have to come to terms with.
Yeah, I can really understand this sort of repulsion, maybe. I don't know if that's the right word. Like, I get it. Like, even me as a parish priest, soon to be parish priest, I get it. Like, I can so relate to, like, I want nothing to do with that, you know? And I hear people, I really do. I hear people when they're like, I can't step into a church.
And even if you do step in, like if you're like, oh, it's Christmas and my family's going to go, I guess I'll go with them. If you've experienced that kind of trauma from the church setting, then the entire time, at least this is just from me, I'm speaking for myself. The whole time the pastor is talking, I'm just like, this is bullshit. What they're saying is such bullshit. Like I get like really snarky and like salty and everything. And I've heard this before. They are not even being authentic. Like, all of it is really important to name sometimes for people, to like be the one that names it first, because the things that people are feeling are so deep within them. And sometimes they feel like they're the only ones that has ever experienced something like that. And sometimes when we name those things, then it can create more spaces for vulnerability and for people to share and to then name their own trauma, like you were mentioning beforehand.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Are you working on any other writing? Like, do you write anywhere else besides books?
Yes. So yes, I write on Substack. I haven't posted for a little while because I'm transitioning into this new parish, but I am going to post regularly. So I am on Substack. What is my handle? I'll text you my handle after because I'm not sure what it is.
Okay.
Right now.
Sounds good.
And I am on TikTok.
Okay.
I would love to write about meeting my Singaporean father at some point, but I haven't gotten there yet, but soon.
What was that like?
Wow, that'd be interesting.
Yeah, it was very, it was really interesting to learn about Singaporean culture a bit. I learned that my biological father is half Chinese and half Indian. And Singapore has a lot of like immigrants to the country. There's not like a lot of native people. I don't know if that's the right term I'm using. But there's a lot of multi-ethnicity and just diversity. So, you know, he spoke 4 different languages or speaks 4 different languages. So it was kind of mind-blowing for me to learn. Just to learn about this whole part of my ancestry that I didn't know about, you know, and it was a little shocking at first. And kind of had to ride the emotional roller coaster a little bit.
How did you find him?
I found him through social media. And then we started talking on WhatsApp and had some video chats and things like that. We don't talk very regularly, but we do like text back and forth once in a while. It's interesting to have somebody on the other side of the world that I'm related to. I don't know. It's I still haven't, I feel like there's a lot of areas of it I still haven't even processed yet. Like I'm still processing some of it.
Do you, when you are in that state of like wanting to process, do you just like write down a million questions, or how do you process that? What is that like for you?
So journaling is a big component of that for me. I know some people don't resonate with this practice, but I've always been a journaler. I have decades worth of journals in my basement, like since I was a little kid. Just I've always really liked journaling. And that's maybe what's led me to like loving writing so much, I think, too. I also use journaling as a form of prayer. So I don't know if it's questions as much as like processing my internal monologue, maybe.
Yeah, definitely.
That's more what it is. I don't know.
Yeah. You can make sense of things when you write it down compared to just the mulling it over in your mind. At least that's how it is for me. Like everything, like I'll write something out and at the end I'll be like, Oh, that's what I wanted to say. And I only know it because I wrote it out.
Yes. And you kind of have to go through the process, right? You have to kind of force yourself to go through the process of it.
Yeah. Which is why, like, I think I've heard of a few pastors using ChatGPT or AI for their sermons and things. Or anybody using it really for their verbiage for stuff. And I just feel like you might get a good thing at the end, like something that sounds really polished, I suppose, but you didn't do the internal work of what it means to get from point A to point B. And so you aren't changed. You're not being transformed by the process of, like, struggling through it to get to where you needed to go.
Yes.
The process is really important.
Yes.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, when I was preaching, it was an arduous process, writing out a sermon. But at the same time, I can't tell you how many times I started with this very specific idea, and by the time I got to the end, it had changed.
Oh yeah,
because I had processed as I went, and something else, and it just turned into something else. I mean, it was great, but it was not what I started with.
That's right. Yeah, happens all the time. Yeah. Yep.
Are you doing anything? You're probably following the lectionary for Advent? Is that right?
Yes, we're following the lectionary. This Sunday will be my first Eucharistic celebration. So I'm looking forward to that. And my parish is, like, so excited, and that just makes me more excited. And yeah.
Is it because you can't perform the Eucharist until I'm
a priest? That's
Gotcha.
right. That's right.
Okay.
Yep. And then the fourth Sunday of Advent is our Mary Sunday. And I have not written a Christmas sermon quite yet, but I'm going to get on that very soon.
I haven't written mine yet either. It's so intimidating to write, like, Christmas and Easter. I'm always like, this is the one chance I get with people who only come once or twice a year. And I don't want to say the same thing that they've heard a million times. And,
The pressure.
Yes. Yeah. What do they need to hear more than anything else? Oh, that they're loved. Okay, I can do that.
There it is. Yep, there it is. That they're loved. Yes.
Oh, that's fun though.
I'm trying to lean into, the lectionary is, we see the Hebrew prophets, right? And we hear from Isaiah and we hear from John the Baptist. But I'm really in this moment, I think, as society is crumbling around us, I am really leaning into the peace and the hope and the joy and the love, right? This Advent, right? Where we can bring that out in each other. And that's really what I'm leaning into.
How do you see that manifesting in your own life?
Yeah. So I've been thinking a lot about living alongside traumatic memories. Right? Like it's similar to grief in that way. Like the grief never goes away. Like the traumatic memories don't leave, right? You might try to bury them. You might try to ignore them. You might try to avoid them, right? You might do all these different things, but I think healing is learning to live alongside the trauma. Right. And part of that is the pastoral call, right? Is the call of Jesus to live alongside us in our trauma, right? This is what Jesus does for us.
Yeah.
As the incarnate, as God incarnate, he understands our humanity, and that means he understands our suffering.
Well, I feel like, I think it was Sarah Bessie who said it. I don't remember if it was Sarah Bessie or not, but said that the church doesn't have room for my grief. And I feel in a lot of ways that the church doesn't have room for my trauma either.
Right.
And that's important for us to acknowledge.
Yes. I also want to name too, we're kind of at the end of our time here, but I want to name that I also think we need to, as the church, name the historic trauma. I'm actually not a historian, so I'm not great at this. I'll be honest with you. But there are many, many talented historians, church historians even, that can help us name the trauma that the church has caused, right? I'm thinking of the Episcopal Church's advocacy of slavery, or the boarding schools, the Indian boarding schools, right? we're even hesitant to name those traumas. And
Right.
I just think that's such a problem. We need to.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, you can't, how do you move forward if you can't acknowledge? And you have to acknowledge. And, like, I don't remember which church it is. There's a church in Canada that has, stood up and apologized for the boarding schools. Now that's a very small step, but at least it's a step in the right direction.
Right. It's a first step. That's all it really is. It's a first step. But I think it's an important one, right? It's an important first step. Yeah.
Well, oftentimes when we name things, we uncover what has existed within us and around us. And so when we can name those things, the systemic traumas that the church has caused, the personal traumas that the church has caused, then that's when healing can finally happen, because healing only happens when we're honest, when we're truthful, and secrets fester. They just cause more and more harm. And obviously, you don't want to push somebody to name something that they're not ready to name. It needs to be on their terms. And sometimes, the church is not a therapy. It's not a house of therapy. And most pastors aren't even trained as therapists. I know I'm not.
Yes, that's
Pastoral
right. You're
care,
absolutely right.
a little bit. I have my degree in psychology, but I never had a license in therapy. And so pointing people to the right direction, finding staff, hiring staff members who are trauma informed, who are addiction specialists, having people that we can really pull from, instead of believing that we're supposed to be the center of all healing, recognizing that healing, it takes place in all sorts of directions and avenues. And I think the church, as much as I would love the church to be that community center that provides everything for everybody all the time, that's just not possible. And there are so many wonderful resources in every community that we need to tap into, that we need to uplift. And so often in the church, we have this idea that if it doesn't fit our moral standard, that group out there, that other nonprofit isn't fitting the moral standard of our church, then we can't partner with them. And I think that's just it's a tragedy, because because there's such good. Name the good. You don't have to name everything that's not working out for you, but name the good, partner with the good, and notice that we're all in this together.
I am so glad that you mentioned that, Bethany, because tapping into the resources around you is a really big part of this. I think that's absolutely right. I write about in the book an event I did at another church where we brought in a mental health counselor, a professional trained and licensed, and she led a LGBTQ expression art therapy kind of event where everybody came and we all worked on this gigantic canvas. And it was so expressive and beautiful. And at the end, we just had this beautiful piece that we had made together. And she actually collected acknowledgments and apologies as well. And so we had this poem that went with the art, and it was so healing. I don't know. I mean, that's an example of sort of partnering with folks in your area. Yeah.
Well, and the churches have the space.
Right.
They have the building.
Right.
They just have to be willing to partner with other people who are experts at what they are doing.
At what they're doing. That's right. That's right.
Nice. Is your book already out?
It is. It's already out.
Okay.
It's called Sanctuary of Healing. And you can find it anywhere you get books. You can get it on bookshop.org or anywhere else. Yeah,
bookshop.org is I keep forgetting about them, and I got it. I still use Amazon in my links, and I got to switch over where I can. Because bookshop.org helps fund local bookstores.
For real? That's awesome.
Yeah.
Okay. I did not know that.
I got to remind myself when I do this to check and see if their book is available on bookshop.org, and if it is, to add that link instead.
Okay.
Yes.
Good.
So it's nice to know that yours is there.
Yes, it is there. Yep.
Nice.
Yeah, I hope people found this helpful and this conversation interesting, and find me on TikTok, Substack, or my book.
Amazing. Yes, absolutely. And this was just such a good conversation. Are there any last things that you think are important for our listeners to know about, Julia? Anything else that you think is helpful for them?
If you are on the healing journey, welcome to the club. That's what I want to say. Like, you're here, we're all here, we're all trying to heal, and it's good work.
Yeah. Thank you. That's so good.
Yeah.
John, anything else you want to say?
No, just I want to thank you too for bringing an exciting conversation that I've truly enjoyed. So thank you very much.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you so much, Julia. This was such a good conversation and gave me a lot to think about on how I can even create spaces in our own community. And even like, I know for John, like he works at Costco and there's people there that he connects with every day, and it doesn't have to take place. This work doesn't have to take place in a church setting. It can take place in a work setting, in a living room setting, at a bookstore or a coffee shop or wherever it is that people gather together and see each other and care for each other. So thank you for this.
Of course. My pleasure.
Thank you for listening to This Is Not Church. Be sure to rate and review the podcast on your platform of choice. If you would like to partner with us, visit patreon.com/thisisnotchurch, where you will receive exclusive content such as early access to episodes, videos of upcoming episodes, and live Q&A sessions. Be sure to check out our Facebook group or follow us on Twitter and Instagram. All the links are in the show notes. We'll be back soon with another episode.